When you think of Real Madrid, you think of dominance, glamour, and a seemingly endless list of superstars. Especially during the Florentino Perez reign and his passion for having the best players in one team, Madrid have been the ultimate powerhouse in European and world football. But what if I told you that the Galacticos strategy is no longer working? And, well, history is repeating itself once again, as we have witnessed twice in the last 2 decades. But the worst thing for Madrid fans is that, this time, there are no clear signs that things are getting any better. What makes us think so? Well, first of all, for the first time in a very long period, we see Real Madrid as a team with no clear idea of how to improve. Yes, of course, even in recent seasons when they've won the double of La Liga and Champions League, Los Blancos have gone through periods of poor form, but those crises have never lasted more than a few weeks. At the moment, however, the situation is much more critical. Real Madrid are playing worse than ever, struggling to create chances, missing more than half of them, and to top it all off, their defending is horrendous. Oh, and last but not least, injuries are making things even more uncomfortable for Ancelotti and his coaching staff. In the last year and a half alone, Courtois, David Alaba, Dani Carvajal, and Eder Militao twice have all torn their ACLs, while the likes of Mbappe, Vinicius, Bellingham, and Rodrigo have all spent time on the sidelines in 2024-25. Furthermore, despite losing the El Clasico to Barcelona by 4-0, Madrid still have a realistic chance of winning the La Liga title, with 4 points trailing and a game in hand at the time of making this video. So, this is potentially a 1-point gap that can be closed in no time. The situation in the Champions League, however, is worrying. The reigning title holder have lost twice in 4 games and still have a visit to Anfield to face the mighty Liverpool. And rest assured that 6 or 7 points from 5 games will see Real Madrid finish outside the top 8. Meaning 2 more playoff games to reach the knockout stages. And while that may not sound like a big deal, 2 more games in this tough schedule is certainly not something Ancelotti had planned for. And all those issues, after fulfilling the ultimate dream of bringing Mbappe to the Bernabeu. The hype was up to the top. Fans were hoping that they would be watching a stacked Real Madrid. And, on paper, things were indeed so. Like, Real Madrid have won the Champions League and La Liga without Mbappe. What will stop them from repeating it with him? And with a financially struggling Barcelona who can't even register their players. Yeah, that was the logic 3 months ago, but now the tables have turned massively. And what if I told you that Madrid's decline in 2024-25 marks a new era in football? Let's turn the clock back to 2000. Almost half a century ago, the appointment of Spanish multimillionaire Florentino Perez as president of Real Madrid established the idea of bringing the world's best players together in one club, the infamous Galacticos. Figo, Zidane, R9, Michael Owen, and David Beckham joined the likes of Roberto Carlos, Raul, and Fernando Hierro, all names that defined football at the time. It was a team bursting with talent, built to dominate both domestically and internationally. The reality? Well, as quickly as Real Madrid were expected to become the most influential team in the world with those stars, they actually turned into an unimaginable failure. Yes, many define this Madrid generation as successful because of the 2002 Champions League, but that short-lived success wasn't enough compared to the initial expectations. For example, the lack of balance between superstar egos and functional team play saw them finish 3 consecutive seasons without a single trophy. Glamour came at the expense of grit and solid structure, leaving fans to question whether building a team around marquee names was really the way forward. In the aftermath of this horrendous period, Perez decided to step down in 2006. Fast forward 3 years, and Florentino stepped in again. And, well, once back on his throne, he splashed the cash again, spending a total of more than 150 million euros on Cristiano Ronaldo and Kaká in the same transfer window. In the months and years that followed, the pair were joined by Karim Benzema, Angel Di Maria, and Mesut Ozil, other players who had already shown their immense talent. And so, Los Galacticos 2.0 was born. And, well, this time Perez was more successful, using his previous experience to build a winning team that challenged Pep Guardiola's La Masia Soldiers at Barcelona for a very long time. This was the golden era of El Clasico, with Real Madrid qualifying for the final rounds of the Champions League almost every time. This iteration of Real Madrid was more balanced, with flashes of brilliance, especially under Jose Mourinho. The pinnacle of this squad, however, came in 2013-14, when Carlo Ancelotti won the coveted La Decima. And yet, despite their undeniable talent, internal turmoil and managerial instability meant that, much like the first edition of Los Galacticos, the team never quite lived up to its potential. Yes, many of you will say they won 3 consecutive Champions Leagues with that squad. Well, that's not really the case, because many fans confuse the period between 2016 and 2018 with Galacticos 2.0. To be precise, Galacticos 2.0 died somewhere around the end of 2014 and start of 2015, when Real Madrid were once again trophyless after Luis Enrique's treble with Barcelona. At that point, Florentino Perez decided to take a different approach and focus on shrewd signings rather than multi-million-dollar star acquisitions. As a result, the centerpiece of the 2016-18 project was the midfield trio of Modric, Kroos, and Casemiro, who together cost Perez no more than 70 million euros. A big difference, isn't it? Another factor in 3 successive Champions Leagues was the managerial talent of Zinedine Zidane, who was a godsend in the 2015-16 season when Madrid got off to a disastrous start with Rafa Benitez at the helm. And now we have the current version of Real Madrid. Perhaps seeing the end of that incredible and cleverly constructed squad, Florentino Perez seems to have reverted to old tactics. Of course, not every single one of those now players can be described as a star signing. Fede Valverde, Vinicius, and Rodrigo, for example, were some of those clever additions. But then we saw Perez go for the best goalkeeper in the world, Courtois, Premier League's biggest star, Eden Hazard, the 2 most talked about French talents, Camavinga and Tchouaméni, the best defender in the Premier League, Rudiger. Yes, he was indeed the best in the Prem at the time of his signing. The best talent in the world, Jude Bellingham, the most hyped Brazilian, Endrick, and all of this culminated in the arrival of Kylian Mbappe. Indeed, at the start of the season, it looked as if Spain and Europe were done and dusted. Even foreign clubs had to come to terms with the fact that Real Madrid would be the new old ruler of the continent. But then reality hit hard. With only 11 wins from 17 games so far in 2024-25, most of them incredibly hard fought. 11 out of 17 might be good for any mid-table Premier League team, but not for the king. And so, the big question is, what is the big reason for this massive drop? Of course, you could blame Mbappe for his poor form since arriving. He was caught offside 8 times in El Clasico. He's missing sitters like never before. He's going to be the next Eden Hazard. Blah, blah, blah. Yes, he definitely deserves his criticism, but anyone with a mid to high understanding of how things work in football would have realized that moving from the worst big league in Europe to the most demanding club in the world is tough, even for the best players out there. On the other hand, Mbappe is not even playing in his preferred position. Realistically, Carlo Ancelotti has 3 left wingers in his team at the moment. Of course, many pundits predicted a similar problem back in the summer, but Ancelotti came up with the most ridiculous explanation we have seen from a top coach. He will play in front, and the front is quite wide. The pitch is 68 meters wide, and we have to cover it with the players in the front. Because if you ask me exactly where Vinicius played last season, it's difficult to say. He didn't play left winger, so it's perhaps Ancelotti who deserves the most blame. Because when you're struggling for creativity in the absence of Toni Kroos, the driving force in the middle for the last decade, you can't rely on a 39-year-old like Luka Modric to play the full 90 minutes. Especially when you had the incredibly talented Arda Güler on the bench all the time. Of course, we could go on and on about the reasons for Real Madrid's struggles. But would it make things any better? When is it certain that it is all down to the management? If the president clearly doesn't feel that the whole problem comes from his ideology, then everything else just won't work. And with this model, Real Madrid will definitely not get very far. Yes, it is possible that the team's mentality will improve, and Los Blancos will once again challenge for all the titles. But this time, the situation is not as calm as it has been in the past. One thing is certain. The next few months will be crucial for Ancelotti's future as Madrid coach. And why not even Perez's as president? His approach is clearly not paying dividends at the moment. And it may be time for Madrid to maybe give their academy a try, much like Barcelona. Anyway, we have a question for you. Do you think this decline in Madrid's fortunes could herald a new era for the club and the game as a whole? Let's have a nice discussion in the comments below. Also, don't forget to like the video if you enjoyed this one, and click on the subscribe button if you haven't already. It's completely free, and you receive unlimited top football content everywhere, anytime. Until the next one.